one of them is that, you're all muted, and please put in your questions or comments in the chat section, which I will try and manage the time between conducting this conversation with Dr. Somaiya and reviewing the questions or comments and bringing them to the audience. At the same time, if you have any specific point, you may raise your hand through Zoom, and I will try and unmute you for this call. Thank you very much. So without much ado, starting this call, Priya, where do you want to begin? Maybe your early years, where were you? What led to your coming right up to the Usha Silai schools?
Sure, Vimal. I belong to a Kashmiri Pandit family, which left Kashmir about a century and a half ago, and the family settled in Allahabad. And the male members of the family joined the legal profession. My grandfather, my father, uncles, cousins. And in my childhood, I heard law all the time. And my grandfather joined the Quit India movement, and he joined the Congress. And after independence, he worked with Pandit Nehru, and I'm very happy to say that he was the Home Minister and the Central Cabinet, Defense Minister. And why I'm bringing this point is that as a young girl and as a teenager, I saw him toil and work. And therefore, for me in my childhood, he became a very strong role model. Apart from the other members who achieved quite a lot in their professions. I was the first girl not to revolt, but to take a stand and not get married in the mid-70s and the late 70s and follow and toe the line. And I told my parents that I want to work. And I want to work in corporate India. And I shifted to Calcutta, and thankfully I got a job with ITC in HR, and I was with them for 10 years, where I met my late husband, coming from a Gujarati family, a business family, totally alien to my maternal side. And I was told that I was making a big mistake. I had never been familiar with business and the Gujarati culture, but I took the leap, left my job. And I remember my father telling me, don't disturb him and his business, you've got to chuck up your job. And I thought I was doing pretty well, but I sort of chucked it up when I came to Jabalpur, where the family had established themselves. And I stayed there. And just to tell you a little story, and what I learned in my 20 years of staying with an entrepreneurial family and a business family. I was a newly wedded bride, and during Diwali Puja, my mother-in-law kept a paper in front of me, and she said that do your puja here because you're going to start a company. Now, I didn't know what had hit me. I had never started a company in my life, and they said that people don't work in our families. We run our own enterprises. So that encouraged me, and I set up a consulting company operating out of Jabalpur and a small office in Bombay. And I ran it for 11 years in consulting, in HR consulting. In 2002, I went through a personal tragedy which changed my life completely. My husband passed away, and my son was 16 years old, just 6 days away from his board exam. And that was a time which, all the cards just collapsed, and the threads of life for me were on the ground, and I had to pick them up and run again. My parents, my in-laws suggested that I stay back either in Allahabad or in Jabalpur and continue living with the family. I looked at my son and I wanted to give him a home, not to expose him to any kind of condescension. So I took a decision. I came alone and I got into a job here, and I shifted bag and baggage, much to the annoyance of my in-laws and a disappointment of my maternal side. And I got into a consulting company, not knowing how to operate a computer or a laptop. And a lot of challenge working with professional consultants in a large consulting setup. With 5 lakhs of my own earned money and not a house or any accommodation. And I remember the truck with my luggage and wherewithal with 3-4 servants and my son, and I didn't know where to go. And I was sitting on the road for 2 consecutive days. In the month of June, I didn't have a flat, I didn't have keys. And that's the kind of...
This was 2002?
2002.
Okay.
And when I look back, Vimal, I think that no problem today is large enough for me because I went through the worst time. And if I could come out of it, not unscathed, I think emotionally very deeply hurt and shattered, but mustered up my courage and came out of it. I just had 5 lakhs with me. That was the entire money that I had in hand, a job. And my son, who was shattered at the age of 16, 17. And we moved. And from there, the story of my working with consulting and with the Siddharth Shriram group begins.
Mm-hmm.
So I had consulted for about 20 years or 25 years, been in HR consulting. Mm-hmm. And when I went to Mavana factory on a consulting assignment, I thought that I had come back and the cycle had completed and I'd come back to the villages of UP. Allahabad is not a very big town. It's not a village, but and I saw the women and I could connect with the personal tragedy of women in the villages in remote rural India, where women don't have anything and they have 4 children to look after. No family support, no financial support, no education, no skills. And I could connect with, primarily to begin with, the widows of rural India. And when Siddharth Shriram and Krishna Shriram asked me to take up this project, I think that connection and that personal grief and tragedy was somewhere becoming a purpose and a drive to not to exaggerate my own personal issues and problems, but my own personal problem started fading away because I saw what real tragedy on the ground is when there is nothing with the woman. And that actually gave me the courage to jump into something which I had never done, which is developmental work in rural India. And that's how the Silai School started, and this is where I am.
There was an interesting anecdote you told me about really how this whole dialogue on Silai School started.
Yes.
I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah. In fact, Usha had been imparting skilling in sewing and stitching for about 60, 70 years in the urban areas. And for a conference, I had gone to the East Coast to a little town called Chirala with the chairman, Mr. Krishna.
Which year was this?
This was in 2007, 8.
Okay.
And I'd gone there, and Chirala is a weaving center. And we'd gone to pick up some saris and some material, where in a hut, Mr. Shriram saw an elderly woman with a black machine trying to fix it, repair it, and stitching. So he asked her, he said, do you have support, family support? She said, no. I managed my life by stitching garments, and I managed to do it with this machine. So when we got back, I got a call from the Sri Ram family saying that, will you be interested in taking the skilling to rural India? So without thinking, I said yes. When I came back to the team, they said, do you know how to do it? I said, no. So why have you got us into trouble? I said, well, we are in trouble. So we've got to get out of it. And I took the team for a holiday to Tamil Nadu, to Ooty in the forests of the Nilgiris. And there we traveled in the interior villages and met some outstanding NGOs. And they gave us the input as to how to start the Silai training in the village areas. And coming back, then we evolved a simple model. And we said we'll train women in a residential program for 7 days. And we engaged NGOs as we went ahead. And these NGOs were familiar with the community and the terrain, and they could help us identify villages and women who showed the spark of enterprise and self-reliance. And we had to get into the villages and travel extensively in the villages, meet community, meet panchayat, meet pradhans, tell them what this is all about. We steered away completely from politics, from caste, from religion. Nothing was mentioned about all this.
But I'm sure it's not as easy as you make it sound. What were some of the biggest challenges, or maybe you can narrate some anecdotes?
I think, Vimal, one big challenge was influencing the male members of the families. Because by and large, even though education is filtering into rural India and there is TV and there is network connectivity, but there are huge pockets which are still traditional, orthodox, especially in the northern states like Bihar, UP, Rajasthan, MP. And so influencing the male members and telling them that we are not here to instigate or upset the traditions, but just to create a skill set which will give a woman the option to earn something else apart from working on the farm, to earn a little bit of money. And please believe you me that in some villages, even 50 rupees, 100 rupee cash means a lot. Another short story, a little anecdote or a little story I'd like to say, which gave me the determination to push it through, was that when we were traveling at the borders of Rajasthan, which is actually the border between India and Pakistan, the desert area, I met a woman who had been trained and she had set up a Silai school. And she said that, ma'am, why didn't this program start a year back? So I listened to her and she said that at that time, I have 4 children, I don't have a husband. And I had an only son and I was taking him to the primary health center when he collapsed in my arms and he died. Now, apart from sounding sentimental or mushy, I think this is very stark reality of the village areas. And she said that I just had 10 rupees in my pocket. And if I had 100 rupees, I think my son would have been alive today. And that would have made a difference. So I think that was one part of rural India, which was a challenge. The family, the traditions. Another part was the logistics. So we had to take training to the doorstep of the woman, because women don't have cash. Families don't have cash to make them travel to a central location anywhere. So taking the training up to the doorstep, and then setting up a system, a residential system in a block or in a large village, and harnessing the support of the community and ensuring the security and the safety of the women. Because there is a political system, there is a I would not say there's an unsafe element and a network in the interiors of the village which have to be managed. And I must say that the income generation option, income coming with respect, dignity, without the woman leaving the house, and without the woman neglecting farm work or household chores or not looking after the children. She ran the school from her own home, whether it was a hut, she could manage it outside under a tree or in a small veranda. I think, and when people started seeing actual money being generated through dignity and respect, I think that also motivated the community. And gradually, we started getting a lot of support from the community, and we started getting invitations from the neighboring villages.
You saw this kind of transformation across all states and communities you were working in, or was it in pockets that some states or some
Vimal, I think it was more difficult to achieve this in, for instance, in a state like UP or Bihar. But once it was done, then there was a lot of word of mouth, and there is a lot of word of mouth as far as communication is concerned in the rural areas. And I was very pleasantly surprised that any information, the informal channel of information flow is very, very active. So if anything happens in one village, in no time, at least 25, 30 surrounding villages get the information. So I think that also helped. And a place like Kashmir was a challenge, because my chairman said that what about getting a national footprint? Now, national footprint meant also doing work in Kashmir and doing work in all the union territories, including Lakshadweep, the Andaman and the Nicobar Islands. So we had to take the program there. So this was the challenge. And then designing training in vernacular, because you possibly couldn't train the women in English and Hindi because the interiors don't understand. And the women were educated. They were about 7th standard or 8th standard pass. But that didn't help much as far as English and Hindi was concerned. So we had to get everything done in vernacular. The model is a 7-day residential program. We give a machine free, and we give the signage and the syllabus free. And even educated children help in, tutoring their mothers, reading out from the syllabus. So it works. And you'll be happy to know that 97% of the Silai schools are functioning. And we get third-party audits. And today we've partnered with something like 64 NGOs. And NGOs keep in touch with these women because they need motivational input throughout. We cannot leave the schools. And the older schools, we reach them once in a quarter. The newer schools, we reach them every month. And that's how the journey has continued. And
so, quick question on your business model. I know many of my business friends are also on.
Yes.
They would like to know, how do you manage? Because it's not easy.
So, Vimal, this is not a CSR initiative.
Okay.
This is an initiative which is part of the sewing machine business. And 1% of machine sales is invested every year in this program by the company. As far as the business model is concerned, a little bit of machine sales takes place, but nothing to write home about. But what is really working well in expanding the program and sustaining the program is the partnerships, and including the state governments coming forward and saying that we want to partner on this program, and especially after awareness of the importance of skills, and pick up the costs. And therefore we bear a little bit of the cost, and the cost is also borne by the partners. And it's a win-win partnership that we craft. And that is how I think this program can be sustained and expanded, because looking at the context, 6.5 lakh villages in the country, And we've really not, it's not even a drop in the ocean. So expansion definitely, and sustaining the program. And you'll be happy to know that our work with the government, I'll give you a few examples. The West Bengal government, in partnership, we opened 3,500 schools, and all the cost was picked up by the government without any tender. And the West Bengal ministry called us, invited us. Chandrababu Naidu, when he was there, he invited us and he gave us options to work in the smart villages. And similarly, recently we started good work with Meghalaya, where Conrad Sangma, the Honorable Chief Minister, he got interested. And he said that I want to lead the anti-plastic campaign. And I want these women to produce bags. And now these women are doing masks.
So that's an
and all the
interesting,
earnings,
speedy opportunity.
I'd like to clarify that every penny that the woman earns goes back to her.
Okay.
So the company does not retain any of that money. So anything, even Fab India offloads work to our women in Rajasthan.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Schools working with Fab India. I had many such fashion label, organizations. Such organizations coming to me and asking for partnership. For instance, Anita Dogre. All these people are getting interested.
And I must say that the fact that they're making the masks now, they're very responsive and on the money.
And I must add to this that my personal happiness came when we identified very talented women and we engaged designers and we said that you offload your work. And some very famous designers in 2018, 19, and in 20 gave their fashion collections to these women, and the women walked the ramp during Lakme Fashion Week. The last that we did was with Rohit Bal. Rohit Bal himself comes from Kashmir, so he called me and he said that, Priya, since you are from there, can we have Kashmiri women stitch this for me? So in the midst of encounters and terror attacks and harsh winter conditions, we managed to pull that off. The chairman having missed heartbeats because the deadline was approaching. And doing that in Kashmir was a true, I think, lesson and a personal sense of fulfillment, because I could discover my roots and I could really go back to my own identity. So
tell me more about the Kashmir story. How many schools are there when you went?
There are 50 schools.
Were you scared?
Very scared. The family was very scared. My brother was heading anti-terrorism. And he knew everything and he was very worried, and he said that I don't want any bravado from you, and you please ring me up before you make plans. And he put me on to General Atta Hasnain, who looked after terrorism in Kashmir, and Atta would call me and tell me the dates when I can go and go here and go there. And having the accountability of the team, even moving from the hotel to Kashmir University and the campus where the production center was set up. Was many times we had to steer through encounters taking place 3 kilometers away and 4 kilometers away. And, it was a harrowing time, emotionally and personally, and my own accountability for it. But God was kind, and we could manage it. And today Kashmir has 50 schools, and we have some excellent women who can produce garments for, I think, the best designers in the country, if not around the globe. Mm-hmm. And they have developed that kind of capability and skill. So, and Kashmir, is full of embroidery and handicraft. So that also helped.
Hey, how about your overseas experience?
Vimal, we've opened schools in Nepal, mm-hmm. And then I requested the chairman. I wanted to go to the Jaffna Peninsula in Sri Lanka. Jaffna Peninsula was devastated by war, and it has the maximum number of war widows. And we did work there, and we are running about 100 schools in Jaffna Peninsula, and all the schools are doing very well. I must also give you a little story of, we've trained about 100 women in what is called the Sundarbans, and traveling in the islands and the mangrove forests. So it was learning and exposure. And there is a whole group which is called Tiger Widows. And these women, their husbands are picked up by the tiger and eaten away. And these women become widows. And every year the numbers increase. So we approached them through NGO partners, and we have trained them, and they have set up their Silai schools, and they've sort of, the initiative has helped them to stand back on their feet. And there are about 2,000 tiger widows in the Sundarban Islands. And we want to continue this work, expand this work with the tiger widows. So these are little things that we've done here and there.
I have one question which intrigues me. We keep hearing about rural India where still the rule of law is not as good, and
yes,
local politics and casteism, etc., is creating challenges. What's been your experience with support from local governments in villages?
Vimal, one has to be fully aware, and one's got to be sensitive to the dynamics. But one's got to walk on a very thin line where you are in the village, in the community, meeting families, and yet keeping absolutely away and hands off from any kind of conversation or any kind of influence or pressure. And this is not easy. And I have found this personally more difficult to manage in these a few states that I had named earlier. In South India, one doesn't get the direct brunt of this. But in North India, definitely. Operating in the interiors in Bihar, and please believe you me that there are no roads to these villages. So the villages are really remote. And these villages come under a lot of influence of political parties, of petty politicians, and money being laundered. So all this is there, and one can't be naive. One's got to be fully aware of the dynamics and keep the team on track.
Okay.
There are conversations of caste. For instance, if you work with Dalit women, we worked with manual scavengers, and they wanted to get over their traditional role of scavenging. And we worked with them. We went to their homes and ate, etc. And the community sort of resented that. But gradually you got to, if your focus is clear and if there are no personal agendas involved, I think all this gets communicated and established. And then if the woman is earning money by respect and dignity, and that has made a lot of difference, I think. And the spends of the money go on education, healthcare, and buying things for the family, and saving a little bit of money to build a room or to marry off a daughter. And I think that has helped a lot. So I think the dynamics of the village, and today we have a lot of community support, which is, so we get invitations. We don't need to go there and influence.
Okay.
So this is a happy situation to be in. And it was not easy, and it's still not easy. In many pockets, it's not easy.
So then, when was your first school set up, and now that you're almost touching 24,000 schools, where does...
The first school was set up in 2010.
Okay.
And then within a year and a half, we were with 7,000 schools. And then after that, the numbers kept increasing. Yes.
What are your plans for the Usha Silai School? And then beyond that, what next? I mean,
And definitely, I think plans are to expand the network. Plans are to partner with corporate India, with state governments, with other organizations, because Usha is not a very large organization. And this kind of expansion, even though the desire is there, we won't be able to manage it ourselves. But we can't stop the process once it's set in, once it's progressing. And we've received interest, and therefore we welcome that. For instance, give you an example, SIDBI itself approached us, and we are doing some wonderful work with SIDBI. And SIDBI managers are really contributing. So these kind of partnerships. And then, of course, my personal desire is to convert some of them into designers, into fashion designers, and take it to another level of creativity altogether. And in fact, I've been talking to my chairman, and we've launched a label called Usha Silai, and I keep telling him, why don't you actually, now make it run through women who want to design and who have a fantastic color sense, fantastic understanding of design, even though it's ethnic, but they are sort of absorbing the contemporary, and there is no dearth of information today.
So, with the work that you're doing in Usha Silai School, of course, from the parent company, Usha, you mentioned that there is 1% revenue from this,
yes,
the proceeds which come. But what is the benefit? I mean, tangible
benefit? The tangible benefit is, I think, a little bit of revenue. Like I said, not to, talk too much about it. It's the surprising element was that I discovered in my travels, and I do discover in my travels inside rural India, that Usha as a brand has a lot of affection and respect because of the Usha Silai machine and the fan. And now the brand is innovating and becoming contemporary with other products. So this, and then I think a lot of brand building, brand reputation strengthening, that has been the most positive rub-off of this work. And we, in a survey which is done every year, we are the third most respected brand today. And somewhere it has happened parallelly with the Silai School. And every time I'm in a meeting with the chairman, he with a very naughty smile, he tells us, Priya, please don't think that you've done it. So I said, no, I can't sort of take the credit in all humility.
But I think that's a wonderful lesson that, something done well and executed well on ground has a very positive rub-off to the parent brand.
Yes, it does, Vimal. And I must say, even though I'm bringing back the chairman in conversation, that he has led it truly with whatever business agenda the company has, which is also true, but he has a very clear eye on the social agenda. And so he's always blending them together and making us understand that a business entity has to contribute and vice versa. So this kind of integration he has been able to achieve internally in the company, and therefore the company support for this kind of work.
So tell me, what next? I mean, beyond this, of course, Usha Silai School will continue. What next for you? What next for Usha?
Well, I've been, you see,
another venture.
I have this horrible tendency to jump into things, maybe, blindly. And I was called the other day and said that, Priya, will you be keen to establish a technical training platform where electrical, plumbing, and mechanical skills are imparted to young men, including women who are interested. and not only for the company, but also for opening it up to communities and opening up to the general population, and honing up the skills, again connecting it with livelihood, self-employment. And I think that made sense to me was that given the population of the country, self-employment is one of the answers, and a very real answer.
And I think the kind of skills that you're talking about in electrical, mechanical,
Yes.
plumbing,
Yes.
those are very much required even at the very basic level. People who can't even afford to go to ITIs, for them, skilling.
Yes, absolutely. So we are tying up with ITIs, and I've just finished making the curriculum, the technical curriculum with the team on electrical skills required for fans, repair and maintenance. This was all Arabic, so I sat and I had my first lessons on electricity. So I didn't have a clue about it. But fortunately, fortunately, the curriculum is coming up well, and we are setting up a training center and a lab, and then we are wanting to open it up to ITIs, to state governments, and we've been talking to state governments. And
I can volunteer for electricals.
thank you, Vimal.
At least to that extent, I'll be happy to assist.
So this is what I'm doing, and hopefully we'll be able to do something meaningful on this platform.
Wonderful. That's very good. And I think we'll look forward to that. I'm sure with the lessons learned in Usha Silai schools, I think this will come in handy in this next venture. And I'm sure it will be as successful or more. Before I open the floor for Q&A, what are your life lessons? Anything that you want to say, tell this audience, which is a mix of
I think
business persons, do this, don't do this, for heaven's sake, don't go in this area,
Well, I think if you're asking me about my personal life lessons, I think one life lesson is never give up courage and determination, and an unbreakable and an unbendable will. I don't know to what extent I'm personally capable of doing it, but this has been a life lesson. Second life lesson, which also applies to business organizations and to corporate India and to any other organization, is that the whole area of people management, since I come from that, and people management, I think, is a backbone of any successful business, apart from good decisions taken and the markets and the need of the product. I think the entire area of retaining talent and motivation and utilization of potential, and this is easier said than done, Vimal. I feel that in my mind, till today, whatever way I've led my life, I've been able to connect four things. One is the connection of the profession with purpose. And I was able to do it, and I was very fortunate to do it. Because my profession gave me the purpose to contribute to the women who were going through tragedy. So I could connect my profession to purpose, and connecting purpose to a sense of pride. And I think that there is no substitute, whether it is organizational position or power or money or wealth, in place of the whole experience of pride. And then I could personally connect it to prayer. And therefore, all these 4 P's in my life have got connected: profession, purpose, pride, and prayer. And going back to my personal experience, I think I'm very fortunate that God has given me this work to do. And personally, I've been able to connect this, and that is what is keeping me going. And even in this decade of my life, and I'm 62 plus, and I want to continue working till I'm alive. And And this has kept me going. And the third thing that I would like to leave as a question to those professionals, to those business leaders, people who worked and served, I just want to ask them, why don't you document? Why don't you write? Why don't you write for your own satisfaction and to give back the importance of your life and the lessons? Because in my mind, every life has great lessons that can be learned. And I just wonder why this does not happen. And I'm just leaving the group with this question. I think it's easier said than done.
That is indeed a good question for all of us to ponder over, that we also have had good experiences, bad experiences.
Oh, yes, so much success,
all of
so
them,
much achievement.
Exactly.
Yes.
And all of them have some kind of a lesson in them, and documenting those for generations to learn from, rather than go through the same errors and trials.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Very well said. Okay, I'm going to open this for quick questions from all of you. Please mute yourself for now, and if you have a question, please raise your hand so that I can in chat, or mention your question in the chat. While we are waiting for questions to come in, you want to mention something about your books? I understand you have written two. The third one is, there's a fourth one also coming out, and they're all.
One is more or less, it's called The Intent to Listen, and is being published by Bloomsbury, and the second book is published by Bloomsbury. One is The Intent to Listen is my experience of the fragile, the delicate, the powerful communication capability, which is called listening, and which is not really giving the kind of attention it should be given, and the kind of focus that it should be given. Whether it is a business organization in any way, even in the family. And it's a fragile skill. It's a skill that nobody is born with, but it is a skill which is picked up. And it's an integral part of the communication skill. And so I have tried to capture my own understanding and my own experiences in the listening area. The other book is a book of short stories where I have documented 10 stories of women in rural India and in urban India who inspired me, who impressed me during my work on the Silai School platform and my other work in consulting. And the third, which is in print, I call it Pride and Purpose, which is on leaders and leadership, the kind of leaders I worked with and I have met and I also admire. It's my way of acknowledging their contribution and the lessons that one learns. And just to conclude about this book, I think leadership engages itself largely with transformation and development, and not all the time with positional power and control. And in this book, I've tried to bring the threads of engagement with transformation and development, which leaders in corporate India have seen doing on the national platform, and even in my personal life, people I've met, and whatever lessons one can accrue about leadership. I've tried to capture it in my own way, and it's called Pride and Purpose. So these are the three books. I have written another book, which is a fiction, which is completed, which is on Kashmir and my experiences there, and I call it The Frozen Sun. And the fifth book I'm working these days, which is also a fiction, and it is on two tribes and the experiences that I had. One is the Kalbelia tribe of Rajasthan, who are snake charmers, and the other is a community called the Beria community, where and this is a tradition.
Priya, your audio is gone.
Visited these.
Yeah. Could you repeat the last sentence?
So I'm also this fifth book, which is going to be a book of stories and learnings, is on the Kalbelia snake charmer gypsy community of Rajasthan, with whom I worked in the Silai school, and the other community which I have visited, interacted with, is a community called the Beria community, which is a very self-contained community, and you'll be surprised to know that as a tradition from centuries, every family offers one girl for prostitution. And this girl lives in the family, and she does not get married. And then her earnings are support the family economically. And they work from the age of 15 to 35, and after that, they are on their own with illegitimate children. And so I went and I met them, and I went to the villages and captured a lot. And I'm basing that book and some of the learnings and what could be done. And it's not easy to break through because there's a lot of nexus, a huge nexus that operates.
So incidentally, I have a lot of comments from your fans and who are on this call. I think there's a nice comment from Dinesh. Says it's a pleasure to see Dr. Somaiya after almost 22 years. Such an impression she left on me then.
Is that Dinesh Jain?
Yes, that's right. Dinesh is also on call.
From Levers, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, sure.
Okay, I have another very interesting question from a friend, Gajinder Benz.
Yes, please.
Priya, the question is, in which area did Dr. Somaiya see women being part of society the way we want them to be seen all over India or in the world? Which village or which community comes closest to what you think should be the ideal?
I can name some parts of MP and some parts of Kerala. In fact, large parts of Kerala, where I could see women literate, women enterprising, women getting the support of family and going ahead and really doing stupendous work in the Silai schools and earning. I could also see large parts of the Andaman Islands, where women have taken up the challenge of self-enterprise, and they have established highly successful units of Silai schools. And one or two very, well, there are a number of such cases which we have documented, a number of success stories. One such success story is of Guna in MP, the Guna district of MP, and there's a village called Ajrada, which in my mind has become a model village as far as we are concerned, and where ladies are not only running their Silai schools successfully, but they have also become skilled in the repair and maintenance of the sewing machine. And they are taken by a number of tailors and other people for repair and maintenance. And therefore, the technical potential and the technical skill. So there are pockets all over the country where one has encountered great success and great support from the family. And I'd be happy to say that many husbands today are stitching and sewing with their women, and they support women in stitching falls, etc. So they've also, they've truly partnered. In-laws have truly partnered, where the mother-in-law has taken up the responsibility of doing the household chore, and one mother-in-law said, that नहीं हम कल्ली को disturb नहीं करना चाहते हैं, वो अपना काम कर रही है. So
That
this
is
kind of
really
change in support.
heartwarming.
Yes,
Yes.
I think this is a very good question. I don't want to paint a dismal picture only. But we have recorded at least 500 to 600 truly stories of true success and achievement, and where there has been a lot of support. And I would say the Northeast has been a marvelous experience. Nagaland and the Naga women have come forward, very bold, very courageous, and taken it up. So Nagaland has been a success story. I would say parts of MP, Kerala majorly has been a success story, and going outside India, I think the Jaffna Peninsula, because we worked there, has been a tremendous success story, and the Andaman Islands, tremendous success.
Thank you. Next question. This comes from Bhavna. It says, Dr. Somaiya, you are an inspiration and a role model to hundreds. Who is your role model, or who's your inspiration, or what is your inspiration?
Well, I think as I said, my inspiration in the family has been my grandfather and my mother, in whom I saw great courage, rock-like nerves, and a very high level of personal integrity. So these were the role models. As far as outside the family is concerned, my role model in the services and service orientation area, apart from sounding very esoteric, has been Mother Teresa. And I have followed her life history very, very carefully, and I've read almost all the books published on her. So I've been influenced by her and her work. And in corporate India, I can name a lot of people who have been my role models. The chairman of my first company always was there as my role model.
Which one is that?
Mr. Ajit Narayan Haksar, who headed ITC. I think he stood out in his leadership capability, in his perspective, and his understanding of not only business and strategy, but I think human beings. So these have been my role models. And then, of course, very people who are not known, but whom I have met and I have encountered in my whatever professional and personal journey is concerned. A number of women and a number of village women have been my role models. For instance, Kallibai of Ajrada is very close to my heart.
Lovely.
Revati of Tamil Nadu is very close to my heart. And I have been following their life history. So these being my role models.
Lovely stories. Thank you very much, Priya. We have time for one more quick question before we wind up. So if there's any other question, please post it here. I must also narrate, and this is in a way, special thanks to Priya. In 2006, I had attended along with some of my friends who are on this call, the ISB Kellogg Global Advanced Management Program jointly in Hyderabad and in Chicago. And I remember on the last day of our sessions there in Kellogg, the dean came to class and said, hey, listen, if you want to do one thing for yourself as CEOs, get a good executive coach for you. A lot of things you need to discuss and talk about. And I had no idea who to talk to. Came back from Chicago to Delhi. One of the first things that I did was, and a friend of ours who attended the course was Anand Shukla. He mentioned to me that, there's this lady in now, you may want to talk to her. She might have some ideas. And that's when I reached out to Dr. Somaya out of the blues and said, hey, listen, by the way, can I meet you for a coffee? We met over a coffee, and that's when our friendship started, and she became my coach for about 3 years. So thank you, Priya, for that. I have one more question for you, and this comes
Yes, please.
from my own family. You're truly an inspiration. Your work is admirable, admired. Every time the Usha Silai School flashes across the NDTV screen, it brings a smile, and one wants to bless you for the teachings that you're bringing to so
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Lives that you are touching in so many ways. Question is, what would be your message to young adults who are just at the beginning of their careers? Any special message to young adults?
I think the only message that comes to my mind is that I feel very embarrassed giving messages to young people because they're so smart, and I'm not meaning it in any negative way, but they are truly, I think, informed and educated. But I think managing aspirations, which should be high, should also be juxtaposed or managed with the discovery of contentment levels. And if one can blend the two, I think it goes a long way, where you're not just chasing numbers all the time. So how do I manage my spiraling aspirations? And how do I intertwine this with gratitude and contentment? With whatever I'm engaged in and whatever I'm obtaining for myself. It's not an easy thing to do.
Very eloquently put, how to aspire for more but yet be contented.
And yet be contented. And I think somewhere the long view and tacit wisdom also has immense value. So,
thank you so much, Priya, for taking the time to be with us. Thanks to all who are on this call also. Appreciate your taking your time to join us. This is my first attempt at doing this, but I guess I will really look forward to your feedback, which you can send me as a personal message by email, WhatsApp, whatever you may. And hopefully, if the feedback is good, we'll keep doing some of this again and again. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Thank you very much, Vimal, for giving me the opportunity.
Really appreciate your being
Thank you very
with us,
much.
and a lot of comments from people who are thanking you for this wonderful.
Thank you.
They're all on the chat. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you
for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.